Hello viewers from wherever you're watching us from. You're watching the Gambia's first private TV station, QTV Gambia, and we're broadcasting from our studios here on Kairaba Avenue. My name is Aliou Cisse, and it's now time for your weekly State of Affairs program, your flagship political program where we discuss issues and current affairs affecting this country. If you've been following news, you will notice that on the 7th of February this month, the President of the Republic, President Adama Barrow, oversaw the signing of the performance contract between the executive and three important state-owned enterprises. Here we're talking about the Gambia Post Authority, the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation, and the Gambia National Petroleum Corporation. And of course, in his address at this important signing ceremony, the President said his government's experience is that despite the huge investment made by the government in these SOEs, many of these entities continue to post losses. This, he said, has made it necessary for his government to renew a strategy to change narrative and strengthen their operations and performance. Well, joining us this week to discuss more about this signing ceremony is Bai Madesise, who is the Director of SOE's Oversight Directorate at the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. Bai, welcome to the State of Affairs program.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, we saw last week, the President, presiding over the signing ceremony between the executive and the SOEs. To start with, just take us through when you talk about state-owned enterprises. What do you mean by state-owned enterprises?
Okay, thank you. First of all, good afternoon, and also thank you for having us on the show. Basically, when we talk about state-owned enterprises, we're mainly referring to commercial state-owned enterprises. And exactly what I mean by saying commercial is that those who are engaged in commercial activities. For example, let's take the GPA. They do handle containers. But by handling containers, they also charge a fee. So basically, they're generating revenue and income. Also, let's look at NAWEC. They also provide a service by supplying electricity to the general public, but they also charge a fee for that as well. So they're basically generating revenue and income. So they engage in commercial activities. So basically, these are the commercial state-owned enterprises, and we have 13 in number. We have the Gambia Civil Aviation Authority. We have the GIA, Gambia International Airline. We have the GPA, Gambia Ports Authority. We have the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation. We have the Asset Management Recovery Corporation, AMRC. We also have the GNPC, Gambia National Petroleum Company. We also have NAWEC, and we also have GGC, Gambia Granite Corporation. So these are the 13 commercial SOEs that we have. However, if you look at it from the point of view of the Constitution, the definition of SOE is quite broad. Because what the Constitution stipulates, Section 175(1), it says that any institution that is wholly owned or controlled by government is a state-owned enterprise. So that definition is quite broad. And it basically means that subvented agencies and institutions are also classified as state-owned enterprises under the Constitution. And when I say subvented institutions, I'm mainly referring to institutions like the GRA, Gambia Revenue Authority. Because what they do, they're owned by government and they provide service government. In return, at the end of the month, government will give them a subvention, basically, for their operations. Likewise, if you look at the GPPA, Gambia Public Procurement Authority, they're also owned by government and they provide a service to government, whereby they regulate, basically, the public procurement. And in return, government also give them a subvention at the end of the month. So these are different. These are just basically providing service to government, and government gives them a subvention. So these are non-commercial, and then you have the commercial. So in our perspective, we're only looking at the commercial SOEs, which is the 13 that I just listed. And another difference too between the two is that if you look at the non-commercial ones or the subvented ones, the budget normally is part of the appropriation bill that is submitted by the Minister of Finance to Parliament.
Assembly, okay.
But with regards to the commercial SOEs one, like the GPA and the Social Security, the board endorses the budget and then they send it to the executive for approval. So they have two different approval methodology when it comes
but they also appear before Parliament to present their annual reports and accounts.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But are they all under the Ministry of Finance?
No, no. Those that are under the Ministry of Finance for the commercial SOEs, they're the AMRC, which is the Asset Management Recovery Corporation, and the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation. And you have the GPA, the GIA, and the Civil Aviation. Those are under the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure. And you have under the Ministry of Information and Communication, you have GAMTEL, you have GAMCEL, you have GPPC, Gambia Printing and Publishing Corporation, you have GAMPOST, and you also have GRTS. Those are under MOISI. And then under the Ministry of Agriculture, you also have GGC. And you have under the Ministry of Energy, you have NAWEC and GNPC, basically.
I mean, it's good that you try to make us understand. I mean, what the SOEs means. But I mean, in terms of the leadership, the managing director, the boards. I mean, how are they appointed or how are they identified? Before I bring in my colleague Suleiman Daw, who is stepping in for Mr. CDC, just take us through how are their heads appointed or identified?
Yeah, basically they are appointed in line with the Constitution, which is Section 175. I think 175(2) and 175(3). And also section, I believe, 12 or 22 under the Public Enterprise Act. And what these two sections stipulate is that they should be appointed by the President, but in close consultation with the PSC, which is the Public Service Commission. But it's the President who appoints them, both the Managing Director and also the Board of Directors.
Yes, I mean, like I said, just before Suleiman comes in, like I said, I mean, we have seen recently, I mean, just last week, the President presiding over the signing of this performance contract. Could you just share with us, I mean, the objective of this of this signing agreement, and also why now?
Okay, I think that is an excellent question. If you look at the objective of a performance contract, especially those that were signed with GPA, the GNPC, and also the Social Security, the main objective is to see how best to enhance performance of these SOEs. If you look at it, they've really been quite a drain on government resources because of the underperformance, especially over the past 15 years or so, since around 2009 to 2021 or so. They've been really a big drain. And also the key thing is they've also posed a fiscal risk to government. And fiscal risk in the sense that anytime they underperform severely, that means government will have to step in and bail them out. And that has really occurred quite a lot over these past 15 years. Government has spent a lot of resources building out a lot of public enterprises. In addition to that, also, some of the infrastructure projects that are being implemented by these SOEs is mainly financed through loans, external loans. So normally the government will take these loans and then unlend it to these SOEs.
Expansion that we are seeing at the Gambia.
Yes, yes. That is one example. Yes, they will unlend it to the SOE. But then with the agreement that the SOE will finance that loan or will service that loan. But in most occasions, they do not actually finance the loan. So government then have additional burden of financing the loan. In addition to also, there is also instances whereby the SOE will take a loan, but guaranteed by government. So anytime they default, government has to step in and service that particular loan. In addition also, those that have significant debt portfolios, what is happening is that government has taken over some of that debt, up to 70 or 75% of that debt, and start servicing that debt on behalf of the SOE. So you can see by these things that they pose a significant fiscal risk to government. And if you look at the evolution of the government debt portfolio, today we're looking at around $97 billion, the total debt portfolio. About 38 billion from the domestic end and about 57 or 58 billion on the external front. But a significant component of this debt portfolio is as a result of bailing out SOEs, a significant component. On the domestic debt component, you have situations whereby government was borrowing money from the domestic market, issuing T-bills, and using it to bail out public enterprises. On the external front, government was taking loans on behalf of SOEs, but these SOEs never repay that loan. So government has to take over the responsibility and repay this loan. So they pose a significant fiscal risk to government. This is the primary reason why we really want to go into performance management contracts, basically. So this is one of the main reasons. But also, if you look at it from the perspective of SOEs, there's a lot of potential in state-owned enterprises. Potential in the sense that, first of all, if they perform well, that means that they're delivering quality public service for the general public. So everybody benefits. Not only that, you have SOE's total assets is about $35 billion. So it's quite significant. So imagine if government is to get, let's say, 2%, 3%, 4%, or even 5% return on assets. That is equivalent to about $1 billion to $2 billion. That is significant amount of resources.
Yeah.
In addition to that also, they employ about 7,500 people with the potential to even employ more. And finally, for the first time, they're paying significant amount of dividends. Last year alone, they paid about 270 million dividend to government. So you can see there's a lot of potential in these SOEs. We're just scratching the surface when it comes to really the potential of these state-owned enterprises. So these are the main reasons why really we want to embark on these performance contracts.
Okay. Thank you very much, Suleiman.
Yes, yes, thank you, Ali.
It's good to have you on the program.
Exactly,
right
anyway.
I think it's the first time we see on the platform together, right?
Together. I've started you on your...
Exactly, you've been doing a fantastic job with
yes,
CD.
Yes, so but it's a pleasure to be here. I'm sitting in for CD Cisse. And thank you, Mr. Cisse, for coming on today. Has this happened before? Have you ever engaged state-owned enterprises into this kind of negotiation? By that I mean signing a performance contract with them. Has it ever happened before?
Yes, if you look at it, I'm not sure whether you were at the signing ceremony. I gave a small remarks, and I also gave the historical context of these performance contracts. If you look at it in the early 90s, we used to have an institution by the name of NIB,
yes, National Investment Board. Yes.
And at the time of the NIB, really you had one of the best periods in terms of performance of SOEs. As I said the last time, you used to have institutions like the GPMB, Gambia Produce Marketing Board.
Correct.
And at the time, they were really purchasing hundreds of thousands of tons of groundnut,
yes,
exporting it, and also producing vegetable oil, groundnut oil, and the like. If you also look at Gamtel at the time in the early 1990s, they were also ranked one of the best telecommunication companies, state companies in Africa.
In the sub-region.
In the sub-region, exactly,
yes.
If you look at that, you move forward to in the early 2000s, we also used to have an institution by the name of GDA, Gambia Divestiture Agency. And they were basically spearheading government's divestiture plan. And during that time as well, too, they were signing performance contracts, and you had very good performances from institutions like the GPA, whereby they served as a central hub.
So what went wrong with that? What went wrong with that? Why are we finding ourselves in this situation right now? Was there a board responsible for this, and that board failed, or what went wrong along the line? Well, because I asked that question, you agree that these enterprises are posing a great threat to government in terms of their physical performance. So I'm wondering why it has to take this long if you agree that they've been failing for a while now.
I think the main issue why performance has drastically dropped over the past few years is because after the GDA Act was repealed in 2009, there was not really any institution responsible for oversight function of these SOEs. Now, ideally, the Minister of Finance should have stepped in and come up with a very robust financial monitoring mechanism, whereby they're continuously monitoring the performances of state-owned enterprises. But that did not happen. So, in fact, the Minister of Finance was more in a reactionary mode in the sense that SOEs will come at the last minute and say, I need X, Y, and Z immediately. If you don't bail me out, I'm going to collapse. So the Minister of Finance will react and provide the resources. But there was no effective, really, monitoring. In addition to that, also, there were some lapses when it comes to corporate governance. There were some serious lapses, especially this past 15 years of this corporate governance. So these are the two main issues. But the part of the Ministry of Finance and the financial monitoring, that was probably one of the biggest and most critical factors, because there was none since the GDA Act was repealed. Which is why today, as we speak, we're on the verge of coming up with a new bill called the SOE bill. Maybe we can talk about it later.
Okay. It's important.
Okay, all right.
It is very important. My last question, before I let you go back to Aliu. State-owned enterprises, these are very important to national development. And so if they fail, they pose a great threat, not only to government, but to individuals who live in the country. And so you wonder why these state-owned enterprises were not subjected to the kind of scrutiny that one would expect any institution like them to be subjected to. Again, I understand your question, your answer, that the Ministry of Finance wasn't as active as they're supposed to be. Can we take it from you that from henceforth that this is going to be something that is going to be institutionalized and stay here forever, so that our state-owned enterprises continue to perform and perform better for the country?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the Ministry of Finance, since around 2018, 2019, they created a department called PPP and SOE. So one department was handling two portfolios, the PPP portfolio, public-private partnership, and SOE. But then they were a bit overwhelmed. So as of last year, February last year, 2022, the ministry decided to have an independent department strictly for SOE oversight.
Okay.
And that's when I was moved into this department, February of last year.
As director?
As director of this SOE oversight. And since then, I have to say that we have taken a lot of steps, really, to enhance the oversight of public enterprises. And one of the key things we've initiated since I joined the team is that on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis now, we're producing what we call quarterly SOE financial performance reports, whereby we're scrutinizing the management accounts of all SOEs on a quarterly basis. We're looking at their balance sheet, we're looking at their income statement, their profit and loss statement, all the statements, we're looking at them.
Is this one of the reasons why you sent a letter to NAWEC?
No, that was slightly different. The NAWEC one is that NAWEC also continued to pose fiscal risk to government, but there are a lot of challenges at NAWEC. If you want to get into NAWEC...
No, I just want to, in relation to that question, that's why I asked a question. So I don't want you to get into the problems of NAWEC. Because there are a lot.
Thank you very much, Suleiman. I mean, by earlier on, you talk about the potentials of these SOEs, talking about, I mean, they have a total asset of about $35 billion. I mean, employing 7,500, I mean, people is by no means a small figure as far as the Gambia is concerned. Someone out there might be asking, I mean, you talk about the fiscal, I mean, risk it posed to government, but take us through the content of this agreement.
Well, the agreement is quite broad. Basically, it's an agreement between government and also the state, the state-owned enterprise. It has basically three key components. Okay. The first component is about setting the objectives and goals of the state-owned enterprise. Then the second component is about setting the targets that are going to be measured. Okay. And the third component is about having an incentive scheme whereby if you perform well, you get rewarded in the form of bonuses. Okay. But also if you perform below a certain level, also you get punitive measures as well too. So this is the core idea about the performance contract. And really, if you look at this performance contract, it tries to ascertain that SOEs know exactly what is expected of them, given that performance are going to be measured from now on moving forward. And it's a very critical tool, very important tool when it comes to management. Because with this performance contract, government can now map out a vision for the SOE, any SOE, and then execute that vision through the implementation of this performance contract. So it's extremely, extremely important. If you look at the content of the performance contract, again, you have the objectives, you also have the assumptions, and also you have some of the key obligations of both parties, because government also has an obligation, and the state-owned enterprise also has an obligation as well too. In addition to that, also you have some of the key constraints or challenges that are being faced by the SOE. For example, let's take the case of the JNPC. One of the key challenges is to do with mobilizing sufficient forex in order to import petroleum products, because sometimes there is a lack of forex in the market. And also another challenge also could be the fact that they're incurring a lot of foreign exchange losses, basically. Another challenge also could be the fact that the public procurement law does not really favor them, because they're in the business of competing with the private sector. But whereas the private sector does not have to abide by the public procurement law, GNPC have to abide by the public procurement law. So even if they have a very good deal today for this oil products, they still have to go through the GPPA process. And that could be very lengthy. So by the time they finish, that deal might be gone and taken over by this private sector, to a private company. So these are some of the hindrances basically that we also capture on the contract. And also, for example, also let's say they provide a service to government, and it takes a long time for government to pay them back. So all these are potential constraints. So when we do our review at the end of the year, we have to factor all these things. So even if they underperform, these things also have to be taken into consideration. But more specifically, the most critical aspect of the performance contract is basically to do with the KPIs, which is the key performance indicators that are on this performance contract. And if you look at these KPIs, the way they're formulated, we factor two things that were very, very critical to us. Number one is how do we make it challenging? Okay, we need to have KPIs that are very challenging for these SOEs. And number two also, how do we entice them so that they will aspire to attain these KPI targets? Those were the two main considerations. And we divided the KPIs into three components. You had financial KPIs. Basically, the financial KPIs were derived to make sure that these SOEs transit from a loss-making SOE to a profit-making SOE in a very gradual manner, gradual and phased manner. The other component of the KPI is called the operational KPI, basically things that will really enhance operational efficiency within these SOEs. And the last KPI is to do with governance. How do we really strengthen the governance framework of these SOEs? Now, let me give you specific examples. For example, let's say GPA. The key short-term strategic objectives of the GPA is mainly three things. Number one, they want to expand the jetty, okay? Because currently the jetty that we have at the GPA is about 300 meters long. And if you look at the vessels coming into the Gambia, they range between 150 to 180, maximum maybe 200 meters. But in the future, there's a possibility that vessels are going to be bigger and longer, 200 meters to 50 meters. So the plan is to see how best we can expand the jetty. Instead of 300 meters, you add another 345 meters. So make it 645 meters. And that addresses two things. Number one, you can have multiple vessels anchor at the same time, maybe 2 or 3 vessels, because currently only one vessel can anchor at a time and offload the containers. So those that are waiting, let's say, for example, 5 vessels coming together to Gambia at one point. Only one can anchor, so the other 4 will have to wait.
Is that the
That's posing
exactly congestion and congestion, delays, exactly. So this is part of the problem. So once you expand it and make it 645 meters long, then you can accommodate 2 or 3 or even 4 if possible, maybe, but 2 or 3 vessels. Then that will really speed up the operations. That is one key aspect. The second aspect is also how to expand the strategic objectives, how to expand the container terminal. Because right now there's a lot of congestion, there's a lot of containers at the port, and they don't have enough storage capacity at the port. So the other thing is to how do we acquire properties within the Banjul area, within the Hafda area, and then add it into this container storage terminal, basically. So that's the second strategic objective. And the third and final short-term strategic objective of GPA is how do we computerize or digitalize the operations of the GPA? I mean, in terms of cargo handling, in terms of harbor, in terms of financials, how do we digitalize everything? For example, if a vessel comes in, once they offload the container, how do you track the container so that at the click of a button, you know exactly where the container is? So that's what I mean by digitalization. How do we digitalize the entire operation? So basically, these are the 3 key strategic objectives in the short term for GPA. So the KPIs were formulated to reflect these 3 strategic objectives of the GPA. And for example, one of the outcomes is that the vessel waiting time will be drastically reduced, because currently you can have a vessel waiting for up to 1 week, 2 weeks, up to 3 weeks. We want to drastically reduce that so that ships can come into the Gambia within 2 or 3 days, they're out of the Gambia. So we want containers to be offloaded very, very quickly, because I'm sure you guys heard that currently there's a lot of businesses even sending their containers to Senegal. And then that is really not good business for Gambia. So these are the things that we really factored onto these performance contract and see how best we can address, especially from an operational perspective. And from a financial perspective, maybe some of the issues also that we notice when we analyze the management accounts is that the debtor days. Debtor days means the amount of time it takes for them to recollect their money. For example, if they provide a service to a particular individual, how long does it take before they get their money for that particular service? And one thing we notice is that it was taking a very long time for some of these SOEs to collect their money. They will produce a service or provide a service, but it will take a long time.
Well, so don't you think that has to do with perception of people generally that they provide services to? Because I know, having worked for an SOE before, for example, a bill will come, the accounts department wouldn't prioritize that bill that they owe, for example, to NAWIC. And NAWIC don't have any other tool to push for the payment of their bill. And the bill will be sitting down there, probably on somebody's desk for a long time. Nobody cares, because it is a state-owned enterprise. So that begs the question, how long people can expect that this thing is going to bear fruits? So, you know, an ordinary person would say, NAWIC will move from where they are now to something better. And man, I must admit, right now, NAWEC, I think, generally,
I think
they are doing good.
For now,
I'm not saying
they are
Social Security
and GNPC, because these are the three SOPs that have signed this contract performance.
Yes. Yes, that brings a very important question, which is about accountability. Because this is what these performance contracts are also trying to achieve, accountability. Because if you notice that it's taking you 100 days to collect monies that are owed to you, we say, no, that is way too long. So gradually you have to reduce that amount from, let's say, 100 to 60 to 40 to 20 days. So basically we try to make you more efficient. And then the key catch is, if you do not really perform as per those targets, then there's repercussions as well too. If you perform beyond expectations, then you get bonuses, okay, depending on your level of performances. But if you perform below expectation, there's also punitive measures put in place.
And what is that punitive measure? Because I think that's what holds this SOEs not kind of being accountable to the public. What is the punitive measure that you're going to use against, especially the leadership?
Okay, the worst punitive measure, which is really somebody performing way below expectations, the worst is two things. One, the Minister of Finance can make a recommendation to the executive to dissolve the entire board, the entire board of directors. And also, the Minister of Finance will make a recommendation to the executive to terminate the services of the managing director. So these are really some of the punitive measures put in place. Because what we try, the message that the government is trying to send is that, as public servant, it is an honor to be a public servant, to serve your country in the most meaningful manner. But that service also comes with responsibility and accountability. And there's a lot of people looking for jobs. So if you are put in a position whereby you're serving your public interest, if you do not perform, then really maybe it's only fair to say that let us look at somebody who can come in and do the job competently. But if you do perform also, I think you deserve to be rewarded accordingly as well too. So this is the direction that government is really trying to go into.
Yes, but I just want to come in here because you talk about GPA and GNPC, you talk about the issue of the expansion challenge at the ports. I mean, talk about the issue of lack of forex for GNPC sometimes when they want to import some products. Let's look at social security. What are the challenges?
For social security, one key issue that we really try to focus on when we were developing the KPIs is the return on investment on these pension funds. You know, they have the Provident Fund, they have the pension fund, and the Injuries Compensation Fund. For example, if you look at the Provident Fund, which is normally for the private sector, so they contribute to this fund, and at the end of the day, they get also interest from Social Security. So once the private sector contributes, Social Security manages these funds and invests them. But what we realized was that the rate of return was really quite low. For example, for the Provident Fund, I believe they were paying interest about 2%, 3%. So we wanted to challenge them so that they can get a better rate of return for these different funds. That is one key area. Another area that we also looked at is that the number of days it takes to process a claim. We also wanted to see that improve in a very gradual manner. Another area that we also looked at was to do with the issue of the collection rate, especially the amount that they were supposed to collect from contribution versus the contribution receivables. We wanted to make sure that it's gradually increasing at a very steady pace. And also we looked at the mortgages, you know, they into this estate development and the like, and they give mortgages. We wanted to see also that they're very efficient in terms of collecting these mortgages as well too. And from the governance perspective, we're also, for example, looking at issues to do with making sure that they have audited statements in a timely manner in line with the Constitution, because the Constitution stipulates that 3 months at the end of the year, they should submit their audited statements, basically for scrutiny. So these are just some of the basic things that we were really looking into. And one other key thing also that we looked at for Social Security is to make sure that the admin and operation cost is really controlled, because we detected in a lot of these SOEs that the admin and human resource, basically salaries and allowances, is increasing at a very, very rapid pace. So we wanted to see how best we can manage that effectively, because you want to have a situation whereby the income they're generating, the bulk of it is going to the pensioners, basically, and not the other way around, whereby it's mainly being spent on admin and human resources. Yes, it's important that, of course, they have to be...
Even Dava might resign and can go to Social Security.
So,
but, thank you very much by Madi. Well, viewers, you reminded you're watching QTV, the Gambia's first private TV station, and we are broadcasting from our studios here on Kairaba Avenue. My name is Aliou Cisse, here with my co-host, Mr. Suleiman Dabo, stepping in for Mr. CD Cisse. We'll go for a short break, and when we return, the discussion continues.
Sparse Motors is the largest and most modern auto service in the Gambia. Sparse Motors is the only authorized dealer in Chevy, Mercedes-Benz trucks, Mercedes-Benz buses, Kia, Ford, Futon Mini and Midi buses, Futon trucks. At Sparse Motors, we have qualified professionals who use modern technology to diagnose and repair all brands of motor vehicles. Sparse Motors services include auto sales, auto repairs, vehicle painting, availability of high-quality spare parts, towing services. We are reachable at any time. Call Sparse Motors on 352222 353-4444 or locate us on the Bertel Harding Highway. Sparse Motors.
Hello viewers, welcome back from that short break. You are watching QTV, the Gambia's first private TV station, and we are broadcasting from our studios here on Kairaba Avenue here in the Gambia. My name is Aliou Cisse, here with my co-host Mr. Suleiman Dabo, stepping in for Mr. CD Cisse. And our guest this week is by Madi Cisse, who is the director of SOE's Oversight Directorate at the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. We're discussing about the recently signed performance contract between the executive and three state-owned enterprises in the names of Gambia Post Authority, Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation, and the Gambia National Petroleum Company. I mean, Suleiman, it seems you're going to ask
Yes.
a question.
Now, so the contract was signed on the 7th, right? At the State House. When do we expect the first evaluation of these SOAs?
Yes, there's going to be interim evaluations on a quarterly basis.
Every 3 months?
Every 3 months. But the main evaluation will be done at the end of the year because it's a 3-year contract to be reviewed at the end of every year.
And during this, when you do these evaluations, quarterly or yearly, would those, the information you obtain from that, would it be made public?
That's a good question. To be honest, I have not discussed that yet with my management. To be honest, I have not discussed it yet. But I know that the annual statements, annual reports
will be available.
Yes, they're already available. For example, we've posted the audited statements up till 2020 of all state-owned enterprises. But with regards to the annual performances report of the this performance contract, I've not discussed that yet with my management.
Well, you still have time. You've just signed it on the 7th, so you still have time.
I just want to comment here because you talk about, I mean, financial bonuses will be based on your performance. In this case, I mean, the financial bonus to who? The head or across all the staff of that SOE?
It should be across the entire staff. But also what we have on the performance contract is that each SOE should develop a performance measuring tool for all the staff, not only for top management, but for all the staff, which means that performance...
So most of them are watching, so it is good that...
So that's really what we put on the performance contract, so that every staff will be evaluated. So if the goals of the SOE were met, then that means that the bonus scheme will filter down from the board to management all the way to the lowest cadre of the staff as well.
Yes, just to come back to your earlier comment where you talk about, I mean, the fiscal risks that this SOEs pose to government. Government is more like paying most of the debts, I mean, taken by these SOEs. So one out there will be asking, so why do you continue to keep them?
That's a very good question, and it's a policy question that is maybe best answered by cabinet, because it's government who sets up these SOEs. And normally, ideally, you don't want to set up an SOE and then see it fail. And that's why most of the time, whenever they have issues, challenges, they come back to government and government will bail them out. Because, for example, if a company like, let's say, GPA fails, and you say, I'm not going to bail them out, that would be quite catastrophic for the economy. Likewise, NAWEC, likewise, let's say, civil aviation. So if a SOE really fails, so the objective is not about maybe, whether to shut them down or not if they don't perform, but the objective is how do we strengthen them? How do we work with them to enhance performance? so that they'll be profitable and also they'll be able to deliver quality, good public service to the public.
And strengthening them could also pose the risk of privatizing them, won't you?
Yes, I know in the past, for example, like I said, the GDA, they were seriously looking at issues of privatization. I know at some point, I believe even Gumtel was privatized. That was some time ago. Maybe at least, I think some shares were sold. But now, currently, as we speak, I'm not sure whether there are any plans to really privatize any one of them.
But yeah, and then that could have it could have some serious effects on the economy, not only the economy, but people who work there, you know, the society as a whole. Because yes, public-private enterprise, it is good to have relationship with them, but if you have to privatize, if the problems that exist right now has to force government to privatize most of these state-owned enterprises, I think it would defeat the purpose for what they are set up in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Because they're set up for two main things. But number one is to provide quality, effective, efficient public service.
Right.
That is the number one objective. They have to deliver quality, effective, efficient public service that is accessible to all the public. That is number one. And number two, they must do this in the most profitable manner. That is the number two objective. So these two objectives really have to be taken into consideration. Because, for example, you have an institution like NAWEC. It is a monopoly. So it's the only energy generating company operating in the market. So you cannot have that company fail. Or you cannot say have a company like GPA. GPA is also a monopoly. So it will be difficult to have these companies fail without government really doing what it has to do to bail them out.
Earlier on, you said we have 13 SOEs, and then you are just starting with 3, meaning we have 10 more to go. Are there any plans to roll out this performance contract to all the SOEs? And if yes, how soon do you intend to, roll out?
Yeah, in fact, this was just the beginning, and now our agenda is to see how best to roll it out to all the SOEs. What we have in mind is that this year, we want to do between 2 and 4 additional this year. And maybe next year also do another 4 or so. We want to do it in a very gradual approach, because with this performance contract also, you need a lot of technical capacity as well too. Because now you entering a zone whereby you have to be monitoring this performance contract on a quarterly basis. For each and every contract that you sign, you have to start monitoring it as well. In addition to also conducting your fiscal oversight, which is this SOE financial performance report that I mentioned earlier, you also have to keep on doing. That is one of the most critical functions of the Ministry of Finance, to monitor the financial performances of these SOEs. So now you're really juggling a lot. And there's a lot of things in the reform agenda. There's a lot of activities that government is trying to really accomplish. So which is why we have to do it in a very gradual approach. Our top priority now is to make sure that we have sufficient staff, because the team is quite small. But we really want to recruit, and actually we've started the process. But government processes takes time. Yeah. So really we want to have sufficient people. Once we have sufficient people, I think it'll be a lot easier for us to roll it out as soon as possible. But for now, we want to take it maybe gradual and phased approach.
Yeah. And as far as the terms of the contract, are they the same for each of these SOEs, or they differ from one SOE to the other?
No, they differ from one SOE to the other.
Okay, so what might be a term of contract for NAWEC might not be the same for GPA?
Yes. Okay. Because they have different targets and different objectives. But the key issue is about the KPIs. What sort of KPIs are you really setting for them in terms of financial KPIs, in terms of operational KPIs, and governance KPIs? So basically your vision is, how do you transform them, basically, from being a loss-making institution to a profit-making institution, to a very poor service delivery to maybe good quality service delivery, from a weak corporate governance to a very strong corporate governance framework.
Well, that's exactly, before I let Mr. Sise come in here, Aliu, this is what you said at that signing ceremony, that you want to transform these state-owned enterprises from loss-making to profit-making, move them from below average efficiency in service delivery to full service delivery, as well as from a weak corporate governance to a stronger one. What observations have you made to make you arrive at this observation?
So when we first started the department last year in 2022, one of the first things we did, there was a very detailed and comprehensive studies that was conducted by Ernst & Young. And it's the most comprehensive study done on SOEs, I think, in the history of the Gambia. It's very, very detailed.
And who did this study, you said?
Ernst & Young is a UK auditing firm. And it was a special audit. It was financed by the World Bank. And they really diagnosed all the challenges of all the SOEs. So this was a guiding tool for us. We really looked at the document thoroughly, and it gave us a lot of ideas about really what are some of the ailments of these state-owned enterprises. And from there, we started to formulate a vision and also a reform agenda. Okay, how do we tackle issues to do with financial operations? How do we tackle issues to do with operational issues? How do we tackle issues to do with corporate governance? And that document gave us an idea how to really go about them. There was also a very interesting report that was conducted by the World Bank. It's called the ISOF, Integrated State-Owned Enterprise Framework Document. And that document was also quite vital in terms of giving us also ideas how to approach SOE reform. So basically, the reform agenda is primarily based on these two documents. They gave us a lot of insights. And finally, we also engaged the SOEs directly. A lot. We had a lot of interactions with the SOEs to understand their operations, understand the challenges, the successes, policy issues around them. So these were some of the things that we really used to come up with a reform agenda.
Okay. I mean, you talk about issue of reform agenda, and this leads me to the State-Owned Enterprise Bill. Can you tell us more about this SOE bill?
Yeah, basically, you know, currently the bill that governs the SOE is called the Public Enterprise Bill. But one thing that is lacking under this Public Enterprise Bill is that there's no designated oversight body that was created by the Public Enterprise Bill. So since 2018-2019, government has been working on this SOE bill. Basically, if you look at the bill, the main anchor of the bill is to establish what we call a SOE Commission, State-Owned Enterprise Commission. And this commission will be responsible for oversight function of all SOEs. Under the bill, the commission will comprise of 6 members, and all 6 will be appointed by the president. And just to summarize maybe the key objectives of the commission.
Exactly.
If you look at the commission, it basically has 2 main objectives. That is fiscal oversight and also governance oversight. When you look at the fiscal oversight, basically is talking about issues to do with, now the SOEs will have to submit their budgets in a timely manner to the commission for approval.
Would that not make your office redundant?
That was my next question, because they all have this oversight function. Your
overlapping
roles.
Yes, it could. It could. Yes. So maybe the directorate may have to be converted, maybe to
the secretariat for the commission.
Exactly, a secretariat to the commission. Yes. Okay. Yeah, because now the SOE oversight will be solely under the purview of this commission, basically. And again, under the financial or the fiscal oversight, you also monitor the execution of the budget. You also make sure that SOEs are submitting their annual reports to the commission. And also you have to make sure that, for example, if an SOE wants to take a loan, they have to go through the commission and also work with the Minister of Finance to assess the viability of the loan. And on the corporate governance side, oversight, the commission is looking at issues to do with how will the SOEs comply with the SOE Act. Also, how will the SOEs comply with the Code of Good Corporate Governance policy that is going to be developed very soon? How will they also comply with dividend policy of government? How will they comply with the ownership policy of government? And also, how do we comply with the board charters, the audit charters and the like? And there's also one key component under the bill that is very important, which is the selection of board members, board of directors.
Yeah, I was coming to ask about the independence.
Yes. That one is very, this new bill is taking quite a different approach compared to the Public Enterprise Bill. Because with the Public Enterprise Bill, normally you get a recommendation from the minister, the line minister, in consultation with PSC, and you send it to the president, and the president will either approve or reject. That's under the Public Enterprise Bill. But under this new SOE bill, what we're doing is that what we're saying is, first, the SOE will have to identify the needs of the SOE in terms of skill sets that they want from a board of directors. For example, the GPA can say that, okay, I want board of directors, maybe one who has specialty in accounting, or maybe specialty in port management, maybe specialty in law, something like that. So GPA and the Line Ministry will develop a TOR, basically to reflect the needs of exactly what they want for a board member. Now, once they develop that TOR, say this is what I need for a board member, then they submit it to the commission. Then what the commission will do, the commission will publish it and basically advertise it on the newspapers so that anybody can apply to be a board member for GPA. Now, once all these applications come in, the commission will put it in a database, and then they will select who's the most qualified or whose skill sets matches that of the GPA the most. Then once they do that, then they will make a selection. Okay, let's say Mr. Cisse is the most qualified one based on the TOR that was submitted by GPA. Then from there, they will make a recommendation to the president. Say, okay, we've advertised it, and based on the applications we received, this is the most qualified. So it's completely different from the current existing version of the law, whereby
still the president can reject or accept their nomination.
Yes, because that's in line with the constitution.
By the way. To be in line with the constitution.
That's in line with the constitution. So these are just some of the things in the State-Owned Enterprise Bill. Also, this issue of performance contract is also on this State-Owned Enterprise Bill, that government should have a performance contract with all state-owned enterprises. Issues to do with having a strategic plan, a business plan, statement of corporate intent. All these things are clearly articulated on this new state-owned enterprise.
So when do we expect to have this bill enacted?
We've done the first and second reading, and we've engaged at Parliament, and they've engaged us. They've asked a lot of questions. In addition to that, also we've had a retreat with the PEC, which is the Public Enterprise Committee, and we had a retreat for one entire week, and we discussed all the nitty-gritties of this bill. In addition to that, they also called in their own experts. For example, they called in the former Auditor General, Karamba Toure. They also called in the Honorable Halifa Sallah, who's the former chairman of the PEC. They also called in the former Permanent Secretary Minister of Finance, Aliou Ngom. They also called in the former Managing Director GPA, Adam Adine. They called in also the former Director General of Internal Audit, Aliou Fall. So they called in these experts also to get their views as to the content of this SOE bill. So we're really engaging for an entire week. I can even say now they're very good experts.
And aside from inviting all these experts to sound their opinions, what are the reaction of the MPs themselves as far as this bill is concerned?
It's very positive.
Is it something that they embrace?
Yes, it's very positive because they understand the need to really enact this bill. Because one of the key hindrances with regards to these SOEs is to do with the lack of oversight body for these SOEs. Again, since the GDA Act was repealed in 2009, there's been no independent body really responsible for oversight functions of SOEs, which is why the enactment of this bill is extremely critical. Because now you'll have a dedicated body, SOE Commission, whose responsibility is solely to make sure that there is oversight over all these public enterprises. So they are really receptive and positive to having this new SOE bill. And we are very hopeful that by either March or April, the bill will be passed into law.
But I mean, it's one thing to pass a bill and enact, but sometimes before you set up the commission and get to work, it's a whole long process.
It's a whole new. It could be. It could be. But Mr. Cisse, either from the study that was done by the independent, the UK firm, and all that. When you at a personal level, have you found any other thing besides what is being reported by these auditors? Because in most state-owned enterprises, the queries, the allegations that are coming from out there are mostly, in most instances, have to do with the leadership. Either you have an incompetent leader who would be employing people who are incompetent, and along the way will the enterprise will fall down. If you could use that phrase. Do you find any incompetency? You don't have to disclose where and who, but do you have incompetency in any of these SOEs when you were doing your own study of them?
Well, maybe I'll not use the word incompetent, but what I can say is that there are a lot of challenges in these SOEs, significant amount of challenges. And some of the challenges maybe is out of their own making, but some maybe they're mainly from outside factors. So really, what I can say is that there's a lot of challenges, and which brings me to another point is that we also have to be realistic when it comes to managing expectations, because these performance contracts, they will not transform these SOEs overnight in just 1 year.
They will go a long way.
2 years, they'll go a long way.
At least it will ring a bell in somebody's ears to say, you know what, somebody's watching.
Exactly, yeah. But it will still take time. It will take minimum maybe 3, 4 or 5 years. They will not be turned around just because they've signed a performance contract in 1 year. It will take time because of the legacy issues really from these public-owned enterprises. Since, I say, 2009, when the GDA Act was repealed, there's been a lot of issues, fiscal issues, governance issues, so it will take time. Really, minimum, I would say 3-4 years or so before you start to see some really positive developments in their operations.
I think it's important that you raise that point, because people's expectations can be very funny sometimes with something like this going on, and somebody who watched this program could say, well, I think NAWEC is going to have 24 hours of electricity all of a sudden in a day or two. No, that's not going to be possible.
But at least they know, I mean, NAWEC has not signed the performance contract yet.
Exactly, and so you can expect in the next 3-4 years,
Social Security and GNPC.
Exactly, that they know somebody is watching, and you expect them to perform better.
Exactly, yeah.
And also, aside from, I mean, you talk about the punishments, I mean, you talk about the head might lose his job, even the board might go. How about those who work under these heads in these different institutions?
No, for now we just...
The contract doesn't cover them?
No. In terms of punitive measures, that has to be taken care of internally.
Okay.
Because as we said...
So the heads will take responsibility?
Yes. That should be taken care of by the board and the head. But as far as with the contract with government, government is basically putting the responsibility solely on the board and the managing director.
Okay.
Yes. And those are the people who sign the contract, by the way. It's the chairman of the board and also the managing director.
Interesting. But going forward, I mean, as a new directorate, I mean, what is your long and short-term strategic plans in terms of achieving your ultimate objectives as far as these SOEs are concerned?
Yeah, for the short term, we have 3 main objectives, and I can more or less say that they have been quite attained. The first one is to make sure that we institutionalize the regular monitoring of these SOEs. I'm talking about financial monitoring, to monitor their performances. Every quarter, we scrutinize their management accounts and prepare detailed reports that we share with management. So we know exactly what sort of challenges they face. So we analyze their solvency ratios, we analyze their liquidity ratios, we analyze their profitability ratios, and then we advise management so that management can at least have an idea what position they're in. That is one of our main objectives. Second objective is this SOE bill. We really want to see this bill pass so that we can start working on the establishment of a commission, because it's very, very important that we have this commission so that now we can have a fiscal oversight body responsible for all these SOEs. Then the third short-term agenda also is about this performance contract, to roll them out. So next year, our plan is to do between 2 and 4. Then the year after that, we want to really accelerate the process. In terms of also the medium-term plan, we want to also come up with issues to do with dividend policy. We really want to work on a dividend, because currently government does not have a dividend policy. We also want to make sure that all the SOEs have board charters and also audit charters as well too. We also want to make sure all of them have a statement of corporate intent. They also have strategic plans for the medium term as well too. And in addition to that also, we want to see them all profitable within a very short period of time. All of them, we want them to be really, really very, very profitable. So these are just some of the, and also one key thing that we are working on, which is very, very important as well, is to do with having a uniform salary policy for all these SOEs. Because currently what we've noticed is that you have SOEs that are earning this high, some are earning here, some are earning there. So it's not really very much coordinated. So we want to bring in a system that is similar to what GDA had, whereby you categorize the SOEs into Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, whereby Tier 1 maybe will be based on your turnover or your asset size and things like that. So they will have their own remuneration package, Tier 1, then Tier 2 also their own remuneration package, then Tier 3. So we also want to work on it as soon as possible. So
in essence, from what I'm understanding from you, currently what exists is that MDs, managing directors of all these SOEs are paid equally?
No, they're not paid equally. Like you have some that are here, some that are there. So it's really not coordinated and synchronized. So we want to see how best we can really coordinate it and synchronize it, whereby you have different tires. Because currently everybody is saying, okay, X is making more than me, or Y is making less than me. And so we want to see how best we can harmonize it.
Okay.
But
and because of the people have the perception about some of these SOEs, I mean, their peak, space, scale, and all that, and most people prefer going there.
Yeah.
And that's why sometimes
the other one.
We hardly see job because the advertisement on the newspaper. Before it is out, it is already given out.
That's somebody is exactly.
So
they will lobby for it before you even.
Exactly. So that's the perception of many people about this SOEs.
That somebody is need to be hired.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Bai Madi, for coming on the program. Well, with that, we bring an end to this week's edition of the State of Affairs. Our guest, like I said, was Mr. Bai Madi Sise, who is the director of the State-Owned Enterprise Oversight Directorate at the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. Mr. Bai, thank you so much for coming on the State of Affairs.
And also, just maybe one final thing, I also have to say thank you to the consultants who worked with us. We had some consultants to really build our capacity and also really guide us in the formulation of these performance contracts. And it was a very well built team led by the main consultant, and she also gave us sector experts for GPA, Social Security, and also GNPC, and also a legal officer. So also to say thank you to that consultant as well.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you, Ali. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming, Mr.
Definitely, we have to thank you. I mean, for really coming. I mean, this is what we expect. I mean, if you are serving
public servants,
when you are invited,
come and talk to us.
It's been a quite productive conversation.
Let me disclose this here. When he walked in, he was asking, where are the questions? I said, no, we haven't given you any questions. And here you are, at the end of the program, you have performed.
Exactly. I think this is something that all other individuals serving in government and public sectors should emulate from the likes of Bai. When you are invited on media platforms, come and share with the public as to what you are doing.
Exactly.
It helps, I mean, people to know what you are doing. Otherwise, you just create room for speculations here and there. And thank you so much once again, Bai, for coming on the program. Well, viewers, with that, we bring an end to this program. Do join us next week. Until then, bye-bye and thanks for watching.